Welcome back to our class today. So we'll be continuing from where we stopped. The last time I showed you some measurements on the board and then used my mannequin to show you some measurements to take as well. Because like I said, we'll take the measurement in some stages. So basically now we are concentrating, we'll be drafting the back. So I showed you important measurements for the back and then some for the front. But we'll be drafting now from the back. And to start with, just to ground our knowledge again, to just give us a sort of revision. Remember I said, when you're drafting, these are suggestions in the Natalie Bray book. This part of this side of this table, these are suggested variables, right? But here, the proportions, you must follow these proportions, okay? What I mean by saying these are suggested is because you would need to take these measurements on your client. So here, yes, the table guides you using the bust to choose the right measurement for your client. But even at that, you must take your measurement on your client and then use the proportions to draft your pattern. So for example, in this case, the bust we're using for this lesson is bust 102 centimeters. This is in centimeters, bust 102 centimeters, okay? Coming back to our book here, we don't have 102, but we have 100 and we have 104, meaning 102 sits in between 100 and 104. So what would we be doing? We will use the proportions for 104 to draft our pattern. What proportions would we need from here? We would need 0.0, back neck width, depth of armhole, back up, that's back underarm points, and then we have our dart size and the approximated armhole. See, this dart size, you can see that it varies for all sizes. Then the approximated armhole, this is what it should be, but it could be more, it could be less. So in this case, with the approximated armhole, that's why it's saying approximated. You need to take this measurement as well on your client. Basically, a round armhole measurement. So like a round armhole measurement of your client. You put the tape around the arm. I'll just get a mannequin to show you what I meant by a round armhole. One second. So this is the mannequin. What do I mean by a round armhole measurement? Assuming this is a human being, you take the armhole points measurement like that using your tape. So just ignore that this doesn't have a hand, but let's assume this is the armhole. So you go around the armhole, going under the armpit, and take your measurement for your client to have the accurate measurement. That's why I said there is an approximated value. So, and like I explained earlier, to draft for bigger bust sizes, read this. It will guide you through. And then after you've read this, there is a table here. One second. Towards the back somewhere now. Yeah. So this table would help you with drafting the sleeve for that individual. The bust size, you have to derive the bust size yourself. So how do you derive the bust size yourself? You would get their bust in centimeters, read this, that's the length to waist and the back width. Read this, it would explain how to go ahead to identify the right proportions for your client. With this measurement, you take your client's measurement. But if, like I said, if the bust is above 116, like we have 118, 119, read what you have here and then derive your proportions using the explanation here, okay? So now we're going into the drafting of our pattern. Basically, what we'll be drafting will look very similar to this. So we'll be starting with our top line. But before we start with our top line, there are instructions, okay, that we are told to follow. It says take a rectangular paper, 75 centimeter long. The width should be at least half the bust plus 5 centimeters, or half the hip plus 3 centimeters. So now going back to our measurement, the largest proportions we have here, the largest circumference we have is 117, which is the hip. So we're going to be taking half of the hip plus 3 centimeters because the hip is the largest circumference we have. The bust is 102, the hip is 117. So we'll be using the hip circumference. So because it says here, whichever is the larger, all right? And after now, like I said, we're going to be using our hip because our hip is larger than the bust, sorry, is larger than the bust. We had 3 centimeters to the hip, and then we need to have an extra 4 to 5 centimeters added for margin. What do we mean by margin? Here, these are the margins. This is the back on the backs, the center back. This the margin on the at the center front. Okay, so we need 4 to 5 centimeters to have our margins. Okay, so we'll be doing that now. Right, so we'll create our top line where our pattern will be starting from. We have a margin here at the top, and then we have the margins at the side. So now let me show you what it says there. It is essential, sorry, it is not essential to fit the half bodice into a rectangle so that the hip points touch. Back and front may be drafted some distance apart. It is advisable, however, to avoid overlapping. What they're trying to say here is when you're drafting your pattern, make sure you have enough space between the front and the back pattern because you don't want them to overlap. Once they overlap, there's a possibility that you'll be making an error. You'll be making errors. So now, the left edge of the paper is the left edge or preferably a line parallel to it, 2 centimeters inside the edge. So like what we have here, the left and the right. And then at the top of the paper, I'm just skipping. At the top of the paper, we need another 2 to 3 centimeters to create our title. Okay, this top line is a title point. So you can put the name of a client there, you can put the date the pattern is, you drafted the pattern, and then any other details you need, you put it there at the top line. And this top line is also useful to determine other measurements that would, as we move on, you would see the advantage of having a top line, okay? So I'll just put this aside and we'll be back. But we need to draw our margins now. So we are starting with the top line, okay? So the top line, we were told to leave 2 to 3 centimeters. 2 to 3 centimeters, okay? So I'll be doing that, 2 to 3 centimeters. So in this case now, I hope you can see this. If you can't, this is 2 centimeters, this is 3 centimeters, or better still, for the top line, you can just use your tape and use a 1 inch, or you turn to the back and use this or that, okay? This is 1 cm, 2 cm, this is 1 cm line, 2 cm line, 3 cm line. So we choose this or that. So I'll be using the 3 cm line. But I'll just pull the pattern paper downwards a bit, and that would help you see it even better. So I'll be using the 3 centimeters line to mark our top line. 3 cm. So just at intervals, okay? Then I'll rule. 3 cm and the last 3 cm point. So what I'll do now is I will connect these points together. Okay, I'm using my pencil here. I'll still change to a pen so you can see it. I'll draw first with the pencil. You see that? That's our top line. So we'll do all our margins. Then we'll do the margins after the top line, sorry. Both the left and the right margin. Now we were told to leave 4 to 5 centimeters for the margin. Now our paper is a half hip plus 3 centimeters. The half hip here is 58.5 centimeters plus 3 centimeters. That's 61.5, right? So from this point to the other edge of the paper, we have 76.5 centimeters. So if we had the 58.5 cm to add 3 cm to that, that's 61.5. Add 4 cm to that, or 5 cm to that, that's 66.5. We have more than enough on our paper here. So like I measured, we need 66.5, let's say 67, but here actually we have 76.5. So we have more than enough, meaning we're going to have the space between the back and the front pattern. Okay, so now we go to draw our margins. So I will start with the center back margin. It says leave 4 to 5 centimeters. So I'll be using 2 centimeters here. So that means in total we're using 4 centimeters for the margin. So 2 centimeters again here. I'll push it up a little bit more to get more distance, to cover more distance. 2 centimeters as well here. And I do the last one here. Okay, 2 centimeters. Here, 2. Right? So I'll connect this point again like we did for the first one. Let me just check this. Okay, I'll connect the points again like we did for the top line. Move my paper down. And then we come to the center front. Now, we'll do exactly the same thing we did at the center back. So now we're making our margin as well. So we're still using our 2 centimeters. So for the margin, like I said, the book advised to use between 4 to 5 centimeters, but we are using 2 centimeters each on both sides. Okay, still the same format going, marking 2 centimeters and marking 2 centimeters here as well. Okay, so we connect this point too, and then we put our notations. Okay. So our notations now. So this is CB. CB meaning center back. So I'll just put center back in bracket CB. Okay. Here top line. You can as well put your date. Today is April 26, 2025. Let's put that there. And then this is the center front. So I'll just turn the paper a little bit and do center front. In bracket CF. Okay. So that's our notation. So now we start drafting our pattern. We'll be bringing the book back. Okay. Now, if you don't understand anything, put a question in the comment section. I will definitely come back to reply, to explain to you. Okay. And then you can also follow us on Instagram at Eden Apparel Fashion Academy _CA. Right, I'll put you'll see the link there. Now, our bust is 102. Can you see 102? So we want to start drafting now. And it's saying here, like I said earlier, because 102 is between 100 and 104, we're using 104 because 104 is more than 102. So what we just need to do is after drafting the pattern, we resize the pattern back to the measurement for 102. We do the shaping, the contouring of the pattern, whatever, whatever terminology you're familiar with. So it said point O is 4 centimeters, right? Point O. So I'll come here to explain. So now, these are the parameters used for the back, right? Here we'll be needing the bust, the hip, back length to waist, back width, and shoulder. That's what we'll be needing here at the back, right? So, but when we get to the front, you will see the importance of the other measurements that are listed here. And take note that this measurement was done for bust 92. We are doing for bust 104. Okay, so the parameters will be different from what we are drafting. Take note of that. Draft for the body, for your measure, draft for the measurement you're taking, not what the book has said. Okay, this is just an example. So he said now the back. So we are drafting the back now. He said on the center back line, point O is 3 centimeters. In our case, our point O is 4 centimeters from the center back line. These are center back line. These are center back line. So our point O is 4 centimeters. Okay, I'll be using this tape so that you can possibly see. But basically what I'm doing now is from the top line, I'll put my tape touching the top line. All right. And then I'll come down 4 centimeters on the center back line. So this is my 4 centimeters here. That is my point O. I'll put O there. Just like it's done here, point O. So I'm going to be following the book so that you can see the progression. Now it went ahead to say for the smallest sizes, whenever you see a smaller font, like here, because what we've done is center back, from on the center back line, we've marked 0.3 and 3 centimeters from point O below the top line, which that's why I told you the top line, below the top line, 4 centimeters on the center back line. But wherever you see the small font, the book is just trying to, the author is trying to explain how they derive the calculation above, or how you can achieve yours if you're doing something. It's just basically an explanation, the smaller fonts. So we skip this and come to the next font, the next point here. Measuring from point O down the center back line, mark the following points. So now from this same point O, from this same point O down the center back line, we are going to be marking the waistline, the hip line, and the bust line. Okay. Our bust line is what is called the depth of armhole. So the depth of armhole here is 23 centimeters. So I'll just put it here. So I'll just make a note of what we're using for this measurement now. So point O here, point O is 4 cm. Depth of armhole, is 23 centimeters, which is same thing as our bust line, and 3 cm, same as bust line. All right. And then what we also need from here, using our point O, I'm just trying to list everything out. What we need from here as well is we need our back neck width. I'm putting everything down. Back neck width, which is 8 cm. Then we need our back underarm point, which is 9. Back underarm point, 9 cm. So every measurement I'm taking is coming from 104. Okay, sorry. Back underarm point is 9 cm. Back neck width is 8 cm. Sorry, back underarm point is 6.5, not 9 cm. Sorry about that. 6.5 cm is the dart that is 9 cm. That is 9 cm. Sorry about that. So back underarm point 6.5 cm. The dart is 9 cm. And then the approximated armhole is 47 cm. So I'll just put that down. 47 cm. Like I said, with this, take your client's measurement. Okay, take your client's measurement. All right. So I'll put it aside and I'll be explaining as we're going. So now it says from point O, from the book. I don't want to keep turning the book. That's why I put them down. From point O, measure the following points: the waistline, the hip line, and the bust line. Okay. So our waistline is back length to waist. You need to measure this on your client. Okay. Back length to waist is our waistline. Yes, the book gave measurements, suggestive measurements, saying it could be 41.5 or 43.5. This person must be tall, right? But the measurement we are using here is 40, because whoever the person that owns this measurement is not as tall as what the sample from the book. So from this point on, now we'll be measuring 40 centimeters. Okay, so put our tape there. I hope you can see. Then we go down to 40 centimeters. That's our back length to waist. Basically the deepest part of your back, aka where your natural waistline sits. Okay, this is back length to waist. And then we're measuring our hip. Now, hip measurement. There is a standard here in the book that advises you to use 22 centimeters. Okay, it says 40 centimeters for waistline, a measurement of the figure. You see, a measurement of the figure, meaning your client. 62 centimeters for the hip line, which is 22 centimeters below the waistline. This is an assumption. But standard people, actually, you can use 22 centimeters, which is the same thing as 8.5 inches, right? But I would still advise you to take this measurement on your client, because some people have lower hip, while some people have no hip at all. For those that do not have hip at all, you can use 22 point. You can use even 8 centimeters for them, which is like 20. 8 inches for them, which is 20 centimeters. If the person has no hip at all, like you can't see what I mean by having no hip at all is like there's no definition between the waist and the hip. Everything is just straight. Because people with hip, you would see the definition of the hip coming out, but there are some people that you can't even see anything going on here. So for those people, you can still use 8. You get away with that. That's fine. But then we have other people that, okay, for example, this is our 22 centimeters point on the hip. There are some people that they have would I call it longer upper body and shorter legs. If they have with longer upper body and shorter legs, their hips tend to come lower. So you need to look at your clients quickly and ensure that their hip falls within what the book has advised, which is 22 centimeters. I've seen situations whereby the person's hip is 9 centimeters, and that's 24 centimeters. I've seen 26 centimeters hip. So you need to always make sure you measure your clients when it comes to the hip measurement. But standard, the book advises use 22 centimeters. That's for a standard person. But we have 1 or 2 people amongst us, or we have people sometimes that they have different body shape. Okay, so it says 22 centimeters below the hip line. So we are coming down here. In this case, I'll be using 24 because the person I'm drafting for, the hip of this person in inches, I'll be using 23, sorry. The hip of this person in inches is 9 centimeters, sorry. I've seen 9.5, which is 24. But I'm using 23, just slightly more, because the fullness of their hip falls on 23. So I'm just going to come here from the back length to waistline here to 23 centimeters. Okay, that's our hip line. These lines, I'm still going to square them across. Then we are told to do our back line as well. I will keep coming back here. So in case you have this book, you know where I'm getting my information from, or in case you wish to purchase this book, you see. But let me advise you that this book, I'm not advertising for them, is the best book to get if you want to be a pattern drafter. With this book, you can draft pattern for anybody, any individual, however big or large or small they are. You would be able to draft their pattern accurately using this book, right? Yes, the English is Victorian English, but with a little practice, you would understand it, okay? And the book tried as well to lay a good foundation. Like I said, I'm not advertising, but I have to say the truth. The book lays a very good foundation for you that you will not get confused. You will have less questions on your mind. But if you still use the book and you have questions, please come to me, ask me. I understand this book very well, and I can help you interpret whatever the book is saying. All right, you can send me a DM or send me a message on Instagram. Right, so we're told to do our bust line, which is the same thing as depth of armhole. Our depth of armhole is 23 centimeters, also coming down from our point O. So we are doing our depth of armhole now, which is 23 centimeters from the point O line. So we come down here 23 centimeters from our point O. So these are 23 centimeters for the depth of armhole. All these lines, right, I would show you, we have to square them up to the center front. All these lines, these markings, we'll square them up all to the center front. And I'll show you now. So we've done all that, right? We've done our depth of armhole, our waist line, back line to waist, and our hip point. We've done all that. So that's this part of the explanation taken care of. This also is an explanation. The font is smaller than this, so the author is trying to explain everything going on here better here. Please take your time to read. And then it says 11 centimeters. 11 centimeters for the back line, halfway between point O, right? So all these lines, we are going to score them, take them to the center front. Most of them, not all of them, sorry, to the center front. But I just want to put our markings, then we continue. So 11 centimeters for back line, which is halfway between point O and the bust line. Now, there is an asterisk here, which further explains here. To avoid dividing fractions, the figure such as 21.5 is first increased to the nearest whole centimeter, which is 22 before halving. In our case now, we have 23 centimeters, okay? So we won't have any issue with fractions. If we had 22.5 centimeters or 21.5 centimeters, we need to take it up to the nearest whole number before we divide by 2, because, you know, centimeters, when you divide 0.5 cm, how would you mark the fraction on your tape? It's difficult to do that. So that's why you're advised to round it up. Wherever you see a 0.5, in this case, you round it up to the nearest whole number. So the measurement for the book was 21.5 centimeters, but in our case, we have 23 centimeters, which we don't need to we don't need to round up, but we would now have 23 divided by 2 centimeters. So it's still going to give us 11.5. Okay, so we come here, it says halfway between point O and the depth of armhole or the bust line, we need 11.5 cm here because it's halfway, and 23 divided by 2 is 11.5. Okay, that's our 11.5. This is our back line. We are not done. We are going to rule all the lines, and I'll put the names on them. Then 3 centimeters for shoulder line, a fixed proportion for all sizes. So whoever you're drafting for, the shoulder line is 3 centimeters. This is fixed for everyone. Okay. Other measurement you take, you measure on your client, but in this case, the case of the shoulder line, you use 3 centimeters for whoever you're drafting. Or it could be somebody that has a bust of 80 centimeters or a bust of 126, 130 centimeters. Your shoulder line is still 3 centimeters for anybody. Okay, so we'll do the shoulder line 3 centimeters from point O again, still from point O. So we come down from point O 3 centimeters. Like I said, I'm going to be ruling all these lines forward, and I'll put the names on the line. So it now went further to say, from all these points, including point O, square to center back the following construction lines: the hip line, the bust line, the waistline, going right across the paper to the center front. Okay, I'm trying to follow it in order. That's why I'm following the instruction like that. So we're going to square across all this line to the center front. And then there are instructions again. Say the back line and shoulder line less than halfway across. The highest line squared from point O is neckline, and then the hip line. Anyway, I will show you as I'm going. So now the shoulder line, let's start with the shoulder line. We are going to be squaring the shoulder line less than halfway across. So to make sure the line is straight, from our top line to where we have our shoulder line, which is this line, this point here, I'll measure the distance. Okay, so the distance, if our top line is 4 and our shoulder point from point O is 3, then we need 7 centimeters. So I'll just come here and mark a point, put a point at 7 centimeters, okay? And roll it. This is long. This is a long line, but I will not take it to this point. I will just, because we don't need a line that long, okay? Then the same thing from point